right, today we're going to look at section 8.7, which is solving quadratic equations by using square roots. Okay, and so there's two rules for square roots that we need to know, so you need to write these down. Yep, write those down. The first rule for square roots is that you're always going to have two answers, one that's positive, one that's negative, except when x equals 0. And then the second is that it's impossible to square root a negative. Those solutions are imaginary. And we've talked about imaginary solutions before, but today we're actually going to find some imaginary solutions. Alright, so now let's look at evaluating some functions to solve for x. So if I'm given x squared equals 16, I need to get the x by itself, so I need to get rid of this squared. Anybody know how to get rid of a squared? Kind of like dividing, but not exactly. In order to get rid of a squared, we have to take the square root. That's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be taking square roots. Okay, and so whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side, and that squared and square root will cancel. Okay, so let's start with what is the square root of 16? 4. Okay, and how many solutions did we say we always have? 2. That's rule number 1. Positive 4 and negative 4. And you can just put that plus minus sign in front of them, or you can write it as 4, comma, negative 4. Okay, it's generally easier to do it this first way. Okay, everybody follow so far? Okay. So if I look at 1b, x squared equals negative 4. How do I get rid of a squared? Take the square root, okay. What's rule number 2 say about square roots and negatives? You can't take them, and what happens if you take the square root of a negative? That's rule number 2. Everybody should have it written down. It's imaginary. Okay, so let's ignore the negative for a minute and just take the square root of 4. What's the square root of 4 give us? 2. And it's always positive or negative, right? Okay, but this negative sign told me that my solutions were imaginary. So right behind my 2, I put an I, and so my solutions are actually plus or minus 2I, or plus or minus 2 imaginary. Yep. Okay, so look at one of like 2 more or so. Alright, so x squared equals 121. How do I get rid of the squared? Take the square root. What's the square root of 121? 11. What goes in front of that 11? Positive or negative? Very good. Your plus minus symbol. Alright, so if I looked at example 2a, x squared plus 5 equals 5. I need to get the x squared by itself. So what do I need to get rid of? The 5, so I need to subtract the 5. Okay, what's 5 minus 5? 0. Okay, and how do I get rid of the squared? Take the square root. What's the square root of 0? How many solutions am I supposed to have? 1. Very good. Whenever it's 0, you only have 1 solution. So it's just x equals 0. Alright. No. Alright, so 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. What do I need to get rid of first? The negative 25, so how do I get rid of that? Okay. What's 0 plus 25? Okay, now what do I need to get rid of? What's with my square root first? 4, so I need to get rid of the 4 first. So I end up with x squared equals 25 over 4. Right? I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. Now what do I do? Get rid of the squared. So I'll take the square root. And when taking the square root of fractions, you take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. So what's the square root of 25? 5. And the square root of 4? 2. And what goes out front? Plus minus. Because I always have 2 answers. So in front of all of your answers, unless your answer is 0, they're all going to have a plus minus in front of them. Okay, do you guys want to do one more, or you think you're good? You're good? Do one more? Okay. We'll do this one. This one will work. Alright, so negative 2x squared plus 80 equals 0. So I'm going to subtract 80. So negative 2x squared equals, what's 0 minus 80? Negative 80. Then I'll divide by negative 2. Positive 40. Square root. Okay. The square root of 40 is going to give you a decimal, so do that one in your calculators. Everybody remember how to take the square root in the calculator? Yep, the caret thing, the second, and then the caret thing. Alright, so let's round it off to 2 decimal places. So 6 point what? 3, 2. So 3, 2, 4, 5. We'll round up to 3, 2. So you'll do your second key, which is your white blue key up in your corner. And then you'll hit your x squared button, which is down a little bit further. And that gives you your square root symbol. And then you type in whatever number you're trying to take the square root of. So 40, and then enter. It'll give you a really long decimal. You only have to go out to 2 decimal places. So plus or minus 6.32. Okay? So you guys are going to work through 571, 1 through 34.